this is a region that is maybe not prepared for war, but ready to withstand a lot. For Iran, it is first and foremost regime survival, not even the country itself. For now, we see that is definitely about reducing military capabilities, reducing especially the nuclear capabilities.
Welcome to Polish Radio Broadcasting from Warsaw. This is our podcast, Polish Insights on Global Affairs. This time with me, Danuta Isler, and our partner, Peace Think Tank, your go-to source for expert perspectives on most pressing developments. In today's episode, we're turning our attention to the Middle East, probably like much of the rest of the world. And our guest in the studio is Julia Sochacka. It's analyst on Middle East. So we're talking a few days after the US and Iran held historic negotiations over the weekend, negotiations that were hopefully, supposedly, to end up with some sort of not only peace resolution, but also agreement and solution to the conflict in the Middle East, broadly understood. We know that this has not happened. In fact, something opposite has happened. The US and Iran failed to reach an agreement in Pakistan, and J.D. Vance said they have chosen not to accept our terms, end quote. They meaning Iran. So what's going to happen now? We know that those talks will continue in some form, fashion, and place. This time probably in the next couple of days in Washington. What's the solution, if any, to what's happening in the Middle East now?
First of all, I don't think the solution, if any, will be so straightforward that it could be resolved in the next couple of days, because the ceasefire that was announced, I think Polish time somewhere in the night from 7 to 8 April, is set to hold only a fortnight. So we're like only a couple days left. So what has happened so far and what actually transpired over the weekend in Islamabad, it was indeed making our hopes up, but those negotiations, which were quite lengthy, I think that the reports that we have now say that they lasted almost like 21, 22 hours. They were unsuccessful, speaking broadly, but there is some hope for reassumption. There is some growing chatter that they might come back to the negotiating table, meaning obviously Iran and the United States. When and in what shape of delegations is yet to be determined. We are not sure of that, but I think we can expect some developments on the diplomatic lines. In the meantime, there are talks in Washington set to happen between Israeli and Lebanese officials, diplomatic representatives, on the issue of Lebanon. So the issue that was one of the most fragile parts of the original ceasefire. Because
so there's more than just two sides.
Yes, there seems to be so many parties to that conflict, because apart from Israel and the United States attacking Iran answers by attacking the Gulf countries, which broadens the whole view for all the GCC countries. And then we've had shortly after the original attacks from 28th of February, we had the invasion into Lebanon. So that brought it even more. And then we had a couple of mediators, out of which Pakistan emerged as the leading one. And it was Pakistan who hosted the actual negotiations last weekend. But so far, these negotiations seem to be on a very, very initial stage. What seems to still be happening is that the diplomatic channels are still open, probably through some intermediaries, some talks, maybe some contribution to where and when those two parties would meet is happening. What will actually happen in the coming days, we'll see.
Do we actually know what happened in Islamabad over the weekend, other than Iranian and US authorities standing face to face for the first time in many, many years? I mean, we know that there was a talk about 10 points to be discussed. Obviously, nuclear enrichment, control of the Strait of Hormuz, Do we know what was said, what wasn't said, anything?
So the bottom line that the both parties came with to Islamabad, that was a little bit different for each of the sides, because Iran actually proposed those 10 points. These 10 points were not circulated in original to the press, but we know more or less what was in there. So exactly the Strait of Hormuz. There was also the talk about enrichment, meaning meaning that Iran will be able to further enrich their nuclear, enrich uranium. But there were also talks about sanctions, lifting sanctions that were imposed by the United States on Iran, defreezing assets, and withdrawal of American forces from the region. So a lot of these points were almost non-starters for the American side, which seemed to approach with different points that concerned exactly prohibition of enrichment and reclaiming control over Strait of Hormuz for the international community. So basically coming back to the status quo. Now, what we know for sure is that there are certain red lines that will prevent the negotiations from going further, and that is definitely the nuclear issue, possibly the Strait of Hormuz issue, which we've seen because shortly after the fiasco of the negotiations, that another blockade, the American blockade, was imposed. There is also the question of how important is the issue of sanctions. For Iran, probably it is a growing concern as they are being also economically...
Yes, their economy is in a very bad shape. And I got to believe further escalation of this conflict and sanctions and basically most of the world now distancing itself in some fashion from Iran, this is not really in Iran's interest, no?
Well, it depends from which angle we're looking at the issue, because definitely economically speaking, Iran is in a precarious position. People of Iran are in a very precarious position. They've been finding themselves in a worsening economic environment for years now because of the sanctions.
Yes.
And obviously, the war exacerbated these conditions, not only because the blockade problems with international trade, but also because of the physical damage that is being incurred on Iranian cities. On the other hand, Iran has also proven to be very resilient in terms of dealing with wartime and warfare.
Well, it's not the first time they are dealing with it.
It is not the first time. And also because it is widely seen both inside Iran and outside Iran as a war of survival. The stakes are different, so also the resilience will be different. I think in general, what is really interesting when looking at the whole region is the different shades and levels of resilience that we've seen. The wartime resilience from Iran, the economic resilience from the Gulf countries, who have also been withstanding the economic pressure of Iranian attacks and the blockade. So it shows us definitely that this is a region that is maybe not prepared for war, but ready to withstand a lot. And that is probably also what is making this struggle last as long as it is lasting right now.
I probably should have asked at the very beginning, but talking from a regular person's perspective, being in Poland or anywhere else in the world, what is this all about? Is it about energy? Is it about the fact whether oil is going to go past $100 per barrel and my government will have to step in, intervene and cap the prices? Or what's it about for regular people? The conflict in the Middle East and whatever Donald Trump is doing now or trying to do in the Middle East, trying to gain in the Middle East?
So when it comes to the goals and aims of all the parties involved, there are certain discrepancies there, because for Iran, it is first and foremost regime survival, not even the country itself, because the country having a 90 million population, being historically, culturally very set in that geographical region, will prevail. But it is the question of regime and how the regime of the Islamic Republic will deal with those issues. For Israel, Israel is perceiving that war also as a matter of their national security. With America, those goals especially in the first few weeks of the conflict, we've had the analyst community, we've had some issues determining what exactly were the goals, the military goals that the administration, the American administration has set forth. For now, we see that is definitely about reducing military capabilities, reducing especially the nuclear capabilities of Iran, but most probably also further reaching military capabilities. So
So also a long-standing issue with Iran.
It is, yes. Iran has perceived the United States as a threat to its own existence for its whole existence, which is now spanning over almost 47 years. And that relationship has been very difficult from the very beginning of the revolution that changed the regime in Iran. And vice versa as well. So for America, this is also a question of security. It is partially a question about oil resources and also maybe trying to take control similarly as it has happened in Venezuela. Although that is yet to unravel how exactly that could have happened, if it is even possible. So from for the Gulf countries, maybe, because they are also important actors there, that is also an important conflict in terms of shaping the regional order, security architecture, partially also the security of economics in the region, what we're going to do with trade that is flowing through the Strait of Hormuz, but also through the other strait that can also be threatened by Iranian proxies or by maybe a group that is supported by Iran, namely the Yemeni Houthis, which can also endanger maritime travel through the Bab al-Mandab, which is the strait that leads to the Suez Canal on the other side of the peninsula. So for them, for the GCC countries, that is also a vital issue that has obviously endangered their day-to-day lives as well. So from the perspective, maybe coming back to your original question.
Depends whom you ask,
yes,
or which point of view, from which direction.
Exactly.
Yes, and we know you've already mentioned the countries of the Gulf. I mean, all the neighbors around were affected. We even saw clips of shots or fires aiming at the Dubai, Burj Khalifa, and all those places known for their luxury. They are tourist attractions and not typically associated with the conflict, let alone war. We mentioned repeatedly the Strait of Hormuz. I think for many people who had geography years ago, this came into the spotlight and they realized, oh, there is this place somewhere there, which is of crucial importance, although we're talking about a small area surrounded by mountains. What is it, 54 kilometers, give or take?
Something
but the
like
place
that,
through which 80% or give or take of world oil...
So it depends how we count.
Okay.
We're talking about 20 million barrels per day. That is combined from what is all the countries that are around the Persian Gulf produce. And also gas, liquefied natural gas supplies,
yes,
which is almost a bit more vulnerable and fragile resource right now, because when it comes to oil, we have also different producers around the world, and additional alternative pipelines in the peninsula that cannot pump as much as has been going through the strait, but still can somehow try to satiate the market. When it comes to LNG, which is produced especially by Qatar.
Qatar, yes. I think Poland is importing it from Qatar,
yes,
among other sources.
We have pretty diversified sources, but we do import some of our LNG from Qatar. And the problem with those production plants is that especially one in Ras Laffan has been severely damaged. And the first estimates predicted that repairing it will take around 3 to 5 years. So even if in the most optimistic scenario, the ceasefire actually holds longer than the fortnight, and we can actually have a long-lasting truce, and some kind of peace agreement in the end, repairment of certain energy production plants in the region will take longer. Yes, so the overall economic impact might either transpire through weeks, months, or there might be some aftershocks coming in the longer term. Probably we in Europe will have limited impact, but definitely Global South is feeling that impact right now because of the limited reserves that they've had, and especially in Asia, the limited import of oil and gas has been pretty bad to handle.
Okay, so we understand, we regular people, we understand why there is so much in stake now. But it's not that Iran this is international waters. There is international maritime law that governs aspects of those waters. Meanwhile, April 14th, so a few days after those unsuccessful weekend talks, the US started blocking ships leaving Iran's ports. And of course, Donald Trump said that Iran is breaching the fragile ceasefire. So what's going to happen next?
I think it is hard to predict with certainty what is going to happen. The blockade, on one hand, might put more pressure on Iran because, from what I understand, the U.S. aims to block all the Iranian shipments that were going out of the Gulf, which was also a source of oil revenue for the regime, which later fueled the warfare machine. Now, we do have some leaks that some sanctioned vessels passed anyway. So first question is about the actual effectiveness of the blockade. And the other question is about the Gulf countries, because for them, any other added pressure on the strait is inherently a negative outcome. So I do expect some pressure from the GCC partners onto the Trump administration, although their negotiation power is limited in terms of the relations with America. So let's see how the blockade holds. For now, even though both sides have repeatedly stated that the ceasefire is being breached, that it is fragile, that the other side is endangering it, well, for now, officially, it still holds. And we still have a few more days to go, and a possibility of opening a new window for negotiations for diplomatic channels. I do also think that date, those 14 days, were not set in stone, in the sense that we've seen President Trump extending deadlines before.
And changing his mind overnight about many
true.
Things.
We've also seen those deadlines being not necessarily held up to, not only by the Americans. So I wouldn't be so set on looking at that 14-day mark, because, as we've seen with the ceasefire came in a most unexpected moment when we were expecting completely different, far more negative outcomes.
Yes.
So maybe there is a chance of extending it and later going on with the talks if they are actually if they actually take to a reassumption.
Now, the Gulf countries that are affected, almost the whole region, from your take, are they nervous? Are they upset? Are they irritated that this is happening? This is what they have to deal with? Or, since you said not many of them have leverage in talking with Americans?
So the leverage there is limited because America is the main guarantor of their security, also the main supplier of arms. They've tried to prevent the conflict in the months and weeks before February 28th. Right now, from what we see, they are set on diplomatic resolution,
Yes.
especially states like Qatar and Oman. They do believe that first and foremost, security is important than the economics. And they are very much set on the mediating, negotiating with Iran. Also because once the military action completes, Iran is still going to be there. They're still going to be their neighbors. So somehow those relations have to be
So they have to somehow coexist
Yes.
in the region.
On the other hand, Saudi Arabia and the Emirates perceive Iran as a bigger threat.
Saudis are close to Americans, no? To the US.
They are.
They have the ear of the president.
Yes, especially Mohammed bin Salman is said to be quite close with President Trump, although that relationship might also be a bit more volatile in terms of that MBS has to right now take care of his own country, which is threatened by Iranian drones. That's one thing, but also there is still that very unstable situation with Yemeni Houthis, who they have engaged, in military action before. And they are the ones, the Saudis are the ones who use the most that passage of Bab el-Mandab and Suez Canal, because their pipelines that used to, or their oil that used to go through the strait is now to some extent around 7 million barrels per day going through the Yanbu port, which is on the other side of the peninsula. So they also have to take into consideration that. That being said, weakened Iran that cannot pose a regional threat would be most probably welcomed by both Saudis and Emiratis.
So at the end of the day, what is the biggest stumbling block in those negotiations or on the way to resolve the situation in the Middle East? Is it we already know that there are several more actors than just US and Israel and Iran. Is it the potential uranium enrichment? I'm saying potential, probably quote unquote, by Iran. Is it the oil passing through Strait of Hormuz? Is it the regime? Can we even say if there is what's the biggest stumbling block?
I think we can speculate on that. To some extent, it is definitely the uranium enrichment. That was the main bone of contention between the Trump administration and the Iranian regime, but also other administrations before, because it is perceived as one of the main threats. But it is not the only problem there. On the Iranian side, initially, it was signaled that the Lebanese theater is the biggest issue on the road to a peaceful resolution. We had this disagreement whether Lebanon is included, whether it is not. It is also the question of what's going to happen to Hezbollah, which is this military arm stretched from Iran all the way to borders of Israel. So there is a question of how important that issue is now, and if the Lebanese officials from the government can reach a solution that will be satisfactory to Israelis and that can be actually enforced, because there is also the question of what are the actual capabilities of the Lebanese government, the Lebanese army to contain what is happening in the south of their country. So there is this question. And then right now, this new development is the question of the strait, because one of the supposed conditions of the initial ceasefire was opening the strait. That has not happened. We have not seen increasing traffic, but soon after there was another blockade. So for now, we will definitely not see any increase in the traffic, although the Americans do declare that, first of all, they will let ships carrying humanitarian supplies,
yes,
so mostly food, medical supplies, and they are supposed to also let through the friendly ships, but to do that, those ships first have to pass the Iranian blockade. So that seems to be more complicated, especially because letting those ships go is not as much a political decision as it is economic economic one. So there is a question of the insurance premiums. How will be the risk assessments? Will those operators actually let their crews go? Because even one strike on one cargo ship or one tanker will elevate the prices, will elevate the cost of shipping, and will definitely prevent other operators from letting their crews go.
And having impact on the pockets of everyone pretty much around the world. Yes. So at the end of the day, it seems like money talks, something that seems to be very close to a US president who has been a businessman all his life. He seems to be one of the driving forces in this situation. And he is the man who once famously said if he were had been a president earlier, he would have finished the war with Ukraine in one day, which we know did not happen. Ukraine war has been going on for over 4 years now. Can you imagine the situation, war in the Middle East happening for, I don't even want to speculate how much longer?
I do think that the sooner it ends, the better for everyone. The economic spillout, the fallout that would follow, extending the war even by months, would be one of the biggest shocks. I don't think we could trace back anyone that would be similar. Again, firstly, for the most unprivileged communities in the world, so for the global south communities, and then also for Europe. I also do not think that there are resources on both sides to drag it for years. Both military resources on the Iranian side and financial resources, but also we need to remember that America is a democracy, so the Trump administration does answer before the American people. So whatever is happening, whatever decisions are being taken there, do also need to take into consideration potential electoral outcomes that will follow. So
especially, I'm sorry, that the US is facing midterms in November.
Yes, exactly. So
that's a big checkpoint.
I cannot imagine the war lasting years. I do think that the peace process will be lengthy. And we're talking that the first JCPOA, the agreement from 2015, it took also, I think, years to be negotiated in the shape that was eventually agreed upon. So here, if we ever get to the stage of actually negotiating what is going to happen to the uranium, what is going to be the law governing the Strait of Hormuz, those are very technical things. So probably agreeing upon them will also take more time. But the initial peace process, we'll see what's going to happen in the next few days of the ceasefire, and especially if the new round of negotiations will be held.
So fingers crossed to the peaceful solution that will benefit everyone. That's it in this edition of Polish Insights on Global Affairs. My guest was Julia Sochacka, analyst with PISM, Polish Institute of International Affairs based in Warsaw. Thank you very much.
Thank you for having me.